I'm just popping in to let you know that this is a compilation, so this is in fact videos I have posted in the past. Made a few minor edits here to clean them up a little bit. I am going back to some Mario content before moving on to Zelda because there are a few characters I missed. So I just wanted to let you know that's what's in the works right now. Can't wait to move on to Zelda at some point too, so I'll see you later. Enjoy the compilation. Only legends know.
Nintendo! Next level games! Woohoo! Pow!
This is the nation of Sarasaland. It's got this knockoff Goomba, a Sphinx, pyramids, this weird Moai statue that everyone was throwing in their Splatoon lockers, and Princess Daisy. Princess Daisy is one of those characters I've seen many Mario fans advocating to return in an actual Super Mario game. She's the sassier, more outspoken princess within the franchise, and in my opinion, grossly underutilized. But how did she come to be? Why does Nintendo restrict her to sports games and spin-offs? Let's take a deeper dive into her origins. Welcome everyone to Origin Oracle. Kick back, grab a snack, and let's head back in time. It's no secret that Princess Daisy made her debut in the original Game Boy title, Super Mario Land, released in 1989. Much like Princess Peach within the Super Mario Bros. Actually, let me address this one time because I had a vocal minority getting pretty upset that I referred to this title as Super Mario Bros. I love corrections in the comment section because that's what keeps me in check, but it got to the point where people were condescendingly telling me the definition of an abbreviation in the comment section, like English teachers on crack. Guys, I know this is an abbreviation for brothers. I've used bros and brothers in this context interchangeably since the early 90s.
And I have to wonder if these same people lose sleep at night when fans refer to this game as Super Smash Bros.
Do they visibly cringe when they ask for directions and someone says make a left on 7th Ave? Anyway, corrections are always welcome, just don't be that guy. And to those who politely corrected me, thanks for being civil. Here's a virtual cookie. And for the sake of accuracy though, from now on I'll pronounce this game exactly as Nintendo intended it. Much like Princess Peach in Super Mario Bros. Released in 1985, Princess Daisy was intended to play a similar role as the damsel in distress in Super Mario Land. So this story kicks off with an evil space alien, Topanga, invading Sarasaland and kidnapping Daisy to make her his queen. Just kidding, this guy's name's Tatanga, but I can't think of anything else when I hear that name. So Tatanga here will also hypnotize the citizens of Sarasaland to help him with his plan. Enter Mario, who will go on a journey to each of Sarasaland's 4 kingdoms to stop Tatanga and bring peace back to the nation. It's a pretty simple story overall, but I always loved how different the aesthetic was here in comparison to Super Mario Bros. Because there was so much weird shit going on here. Like these things here. They're called Goombos.
Oh my god, what is that?
They operate and look very similar to Goombas, but the change is just subtle enough for this to look off-putting. And if you really want to see something weird, here's a Goomba posing with Tony the Tiger in a Kellogg's Nintendo trading card. Anyway, the levels in Super Mario Land take place in 4 different kingdoms within Sarasaland. Birabuto Kingdom, based on ancient Egypt, Muda Kingdom, based on Bermuda, Eastern Kingdom, based on Easter Island, and Chai Kingdom, based on ancient China. Each of these kingdoms have a different ruler that will serve as the boss for the area since they're under Tatanga's control. But more on them later. Let's quickly discuss the creation of Daisy and how Super Mario Land was set into motion. Super Mario Land was a project developed by Nintendo Research and Development 1, responsible for the series like Donkey Kong, earlier Mario titles, and Metroid. This team was led by one of the bright stars at Nintendo at the time, Gunpei Yokoi, who was largely responsible for the invention of the Game Boy and the Virtual Boy, but I guess that's a story for another day. As mentioned in previous videos, Yokoi played a huge role in the creation of Donkey Kong, the Mario Bros. Arcade game, and the Game & Watch series. So to promote the release of the Game Boy in April 1989, Nintendo's CEO at the time, Hiroshi Yamauchi, wanted a set of fun launch titles that would help bolster those console sales. So he pushed for a portable Mario title with Yokoi's team leading the charge. Surprisingly, Miyamoto would not be involved in this project at all, which may explain some of the strikingly different creative liberties that we see throughout the end product. These inconsistencies were apparently caused by the need to shrink everything down to the tiny Game Boy screen. So Yokoi would serve as this game's producer, and Satoru Okada, who was responsible for games like Metroid and Kid Icarus, would become the director. They wanted a new setting for the game, far away from the Mushroom Kingdom, probably to explain away some of these jarring line art backgrounds. But with that in mind, a brand new damsel in distress was created, Princess Daisy. From the very beginning, Daisy was described as an energetic tomboy, though I'm sure it was hard to depict this on a Game Boy screen. Her nation, Sarasaland, has a name derived from the word sarasa, a Portuguese word used to describe textiles that were imported by Portuguese traders to Japan during the Edo period. I'm like a casual Japanese history buff, so I found that detail to be pretty interesting. With the release of the Game Boy approaching, it was originally intended for Super Mario Land to be bundled with every console sold, but they would later go with Tetris instead. Either way, Super Mario Land would become the 4th best-selling Game Boy game, pushing 18 million copies worldwide. Okay, so back to Sarasa Land. Mario takes out the 4 bosses King Totomesu, Dragon Zamasu, Hiyohoi, and Biokinton. I think it's Biokinton. And I'm still shocked that these names were barely localized in the West. By the way, Biokinton here is just a straight up cloud, which I thought was really different from the rest of the bosses. But his bio states that he's just really shy and the actual Biokinton is hiding behind the cloud. Great excuse, Nintendo. Another interesting thing about these bosses here is that King Totomesu was actually discovered in some of the Super Mario Odyssey concept art. It looks like for the Sand Kingdom, they were gonna go for an Egyptian background as well and wanted to incorporate him in some form, but that idea was dropped for a more Mesoamerican style level that we got in the actual game. It actually looked like Sarasa Land was planned to be one of Mario's destinations within Super Mario Odyssey. We can see in some of the concept art the Moai statues and some of the mountains that are found in Chai Kingdom within the concept art itself, but it looks like Nintendo dropped the idea and went with other concepts instead. So with all the leaders of Sarasa Land unhypnotized after their fight with Mario, he goes to take down Topanga. This is a super abrupt boss battle, by the way. You take out Biokinton and then Topanga just immediately pops up. People complained about how short this game was back in the day, and I can see why. Anyway, Mario fights in his airplane, the Sky Pop, to shoot down the alien invader, and finally he saves Princess Daisy once and for all. I gotta point out Mario's dialogue here real quick. Oh Daisy, what happened between you and Peach, Mario? I'd like to think he pulled up to Sarasa Land because things didn't work out with Peach so well the first time around. But seriously, the relationship between Mario and Daisy around this time was kind of up in the air. There's a manga where there's a love triangle between Mario, Peach, and Daisy, which leads to some fun panels with Peach and Daisy feuding over Mario. To add insult to injury, whenever he takes out one of these bosses from Super Mario Land, there's a decoy Daisy waiting for him. One of them even gives him a kiss to later reveal himself as a disgusting fly monster. But we'll talk more about this manga a little bit later in the video. So after Mario saves Daisy in-game, they fly away in his jet and we never see her featured in a proper Super Mario game again. Unless you count her costume in Super Mario Maker. Or Super Mario Run. This is probably the closest we've gotten. I guess we can chalk this up to Sarasa Land being a really peaceful place while there are things blowing up in the Mushroom Kingdom every other weekend. Daisy would make her official second appearance as Luigi's caddy in NES Open Tournament Golf, released for the NES in 1991.
Actually, she was featured as a sticker in Super Mario Bros. Print World.
Where they get to face off with terrifying opponents like Steve, Mark, and
Tony.
This might be the first instance where it's hinted that there's a little more going on between Luigi and Daisy here. There's even a manga based on this game where she kisses him, while poor Mario here is wondering how he's hit a wall with Peach so many times. Nintendo would throw Daisy into the vault for almost 10 years until her next appearance in the year 2000 in a little sports title called Mario Tennis for the Nintendo 64, developed by Camelot.
Plumbers are sore losers. Something to remember when you're playing new Mario Tennis, only on N64.
While Camelot would go on to develop Golden Sun and most of the Mario Tennis and golf games from that point on, it's pretty interesting that they used to be a dev team at Sega, known for their Shining series. I think they realized shit was hitting the fan over at Sega and moved over to Nintendo after that. Anyway, while they were building out the roster for Mario Tennis, they originally wanted to bring in a rival to Peach. Something similar to Wario and Waluigi, who debuted in this game by the way, but we'll get to him in another video. But Nintendo didn't like the idea of giving Peach the Wario treatment, so they gave Camelot Daisy to work with instead, who would become the doubles partner for Luigi. Funny enough, Camelot actually wanted to milk this further and asked Miyamoto if they could feature girlfriends for Wario and Waluigi, but Miyamoto politely told them to go fuck up, get out! Personally, I'm really interested to see the concept art for that Peach counterpart that made Nintendo turn the idea down, but I also gotta mention Mario Tennis for the Game Boy Color. Don't sleep on that version because it's totally different from the N64. It has its own story mode. You get to drive this character through the ranks until he's ready to face the Mario characters. They got Daisy up here looking like the Warrior of Light from Final Fantasy. Don't slay me in the comments, but I think this is the better version. Also, they did similar RPG versions for Mario Tennis and Golf for the Game Boy Advance, and I think you guys should definitely check that out. Alright, back to the video. So after this opened the floodgates for Princess Daisy to start being featured in other spin-off titles to pad out the Mario roster for Nintendo. Like Mario Party, Mario Kart, Mario Baseball, Super Mario Strikers, Mario Hoops, Fortune Street, Mario Golf, Yakuman DS, Super Smash Bros., and Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games. I guess we can thank Camelot for this, or specifically for trying to pitch an ugly Peach for their game to Nintendo. Even though there wasn't much personality to show in Super Mario Land, they did describe her as an energetic tomboy. And this has remained true within most of the spin-offs she's featured. Early on, her voice is pretty timid throughout these spin-off titles. But I don't think it's until Deanna Mustard started voicing Daisy where we start to hear that more gruff, tomboyish accent that we hear in Daisy today. We hear her first performance in Mario Golf Toadstool Tour, released in 2003 for the GameCube. But I definitely think it was in Super Mario Strikers where she took the character's personality and ran with it. She has a very tough exterior and is shown to be pretty extroverted, which I think is one of the reasons she's liked among Mario fans. But for the most part, Daisy still has the same backstory as Princess of Sarasaland. There's been a couple of minor references to her father in Mario Party 3 and Fortune Street.
What do you mean by that?
The internet has officially ruined me. But nothing we could really use to piece together what's going on in Sarasaland at this moment. On their Mario Party 6 website, she had a brief profile that said the following. Peach missed female companionship until this girl with the orange hair moved into the Mushroom Kingdom. Personally, I wouldn't describe her hair as orange, but the point still stands. I'll leave it up to you guys whether or not you want to give this text any credibility. Of course, within a lot of these games, there are still hints that Daisy and Luigi might be a thing, though Nintendo hasn't officially confirmed this. For example, if they team up in Mario Party, a couple of their team names are Steady Sweeties and Tango Tanglers. I know many people wonder why Daisy hasn't been featured in mainline Mario games, or even spin-offs like Mario and Luigi, or Paper Mario for that matter. This is a little bit of speculation, but here are a couple of reasons why I think we don't see her around too much. I think there's a level of favoritism for the characters that Miyamoto helped to create. I don't see this in a petty kind of way, but I wouldn't be surprised if developers were limited in only involving the characters that get his approval in the mainline Super Mario series. I think even Pauline gets more action these days than Daisy, and it's not a secret that Nintendo places strict rules on characters within the Mario universe. The other main reason is that she's not as popular as the others. The famous Japanese messaging platform Line performed a Super Mario popularity poll among people ages 10 to 59, and it looked like Daisy didn't even break the top 10. In her defense, this is a poll among Japanese audiences only, and more than likely a limited pool of Line users, but this is interesting nonetheless. By the way, if you're curious, Yoshi is number 1, followed by Mario and Toad. There are a few other types of media outside of Mario games that feature Daisy though. I showed a little bit before, but there was a Super Mario manga that ran from 1988 to 1998, published by Kodansha Limited, and written solely by Japanese mangaka Kazuki Motoyama. Not to be confused with Mario-kun, by the way. Unfortunately, I couldn't find translated versions of this manga, so I couldn't get all the juicy details from these panels, but the first few entries are based on Super Mario Land, apparently taking place after the events of Super Mario Bros. 1 and 2. Princess Daisy is a friend of Princess Peach, and the story starts with her and Mario arriving in Sarasaland. As I mentioned before, their friendship turns into a rivalry to gain Mario's attention, before Tatanga pulls up and kidnaps Daisy, which more or less sets the plot of the game into motion. It's honestly a very faithful adaptation as it takes into account all of the enemies and even bonus stages that Mario encounters during his journey. For some reason, Peach disguises herself as a robot and also goes along with Mario to save Daisy. The first volume covers the entire story of Super Mario Land and has these really detailed and charming pages capturing the atmosphere of each kingdom within Sarasaland. If anyone can link me to a translated version of this manga series, I'd love to dive deeper, as they cover a lot of the games all the way up to Yoshi's story. Anyway, after she's saved, Daisy would become a recurring character within this series, joining Mario, Luigi, and Peach on their Mario Open Golf adventure based on NES Open Tournament Golf. According to this entry, this seems to be where Daisy starts showing interest in Luigi, because my boy here has a natural talent in the game of golf.
I'm Luigi, number 1.
She still has feelings for Mario in future entries though, but there's another volume loosely based on the events of Super Mario Land 2, the 6 golden coins, which I'll cover more deeply when we get to Wario's video. Wario and Daisy don't interact at all in that game, but in this manga, he captures her and manipulates her into becoming Walu Daisy, an evil version of herself that hypnotizes people into serving Wario. She even manages to turn Luigi into Waluigi and Peach into Walu Peach. Yeah, this was Waluigi before Waluigi. Okay, wait, one more. In the Super Mario Land 3 Wario Land story of this manga, there's this fog that plagues the Mushroom Kingdom with an illness, Peach included, and while all of this is happening, Daisy is told by Peach that she's her alter ego, and proceeds to ask her to save the world. Peach is like, I would love to sacrifice myself for the good of the world, but I'm sick, so you gotta do it.
What?
So yeah, Daisy thanks Mario for everything, kisses him goodbye, and sacrifices herself, turning into a bunch of healing spores that spread to stop the poison. Some of the spores turn into small versions of her, but surprisingly, she's dead. But it gets worse. In a later issue, Luigi tells one of the Daisy clones that she's just a copy and he was in love with the original. That's when we see Daisy begin to rise from her grave while Luigi pisses himself. The manga ended its run shortly after this, so we'll probably never get to see how that one ends. But I gotta give this manga some credit because it does give Daisy that whole tomboyish character that she is described to have. And since there aren't that many renditions of her around this time, I would say this is probably one of the earliest depictions showing her as such. Daisy would also be featured in her very own song from an album called Super Mario Compact Disco, released exclusively in Japan in 1993. So this album is pretty easy to track down now, but it has a ton of remixes from Mario music from that time, and mainly a set of raps by the Ambassadors of Funk, a musical project created by British musician Simon Harris. After playing Super Mario Land on the Game Boy, he was inspired to mix the game's score into something that sounded like house music, since it had a similar tempo. But track 13 is called Save Me With Your Charm, and there's an artist on this particular track that identifies herself as Daisy.
Yo, this is Princess Daisy. You're listening to Super Mario Compact Disco. Kick it, kick it, kick it.
This whole album just feels good. It's nothing groundbreaking, but it's definitely a window into another time. So all my nostalgic 90s people out here, go check this one out. Last but not least is the 1993 Super Mario Bros. Movie, and I'm setting aside a separate video for this, but I have to mention it for the sake of including this version of Daisy in this video. Princess Daisy is the catalyst that sets off the Mario Brothers on their journey into an alternate dimension run by King Koopa, played by Dennis Hopper. We find out that Daisy's character, who is played by Samantha Mathis, is the long-lost princess of Dino Hatton, her father being overthrown and devolved into a fungus by Koopa. I always thought it was a weird choice that they picked Daisy to be featured in this movie as the princess instead of Peach, but they did form a romance between her and Luigi in this movie, so apparently they got that part right.
Bye guys, bye. Don't forget to subscribe. And the next episode will be with me using the toilet. Oh my goodness guys, it's running down my butt.
I remember as a kid stepping into this room in Super Mario Land 2 and looking at this obnoxious nightmare fuel. A blood-curdling 8-bit laugh coupled with this great value version of Mario hopping off this throne and charging at you. Grade A Nintendo weirdness. This is the very first appearance of Wario, an enigma within the Mario franchise that has gone from this hot mess to a well-established and, dare I say, charming character. But how did he come to meet Mario, and eventually get two series that stood on their own feet? Let's dig a little deeper into the origins of Wario and find out.
Destroy Mario!
Wario's debut game was none other than Super Mario Land 2's 6 Golden Coins, released in 1992 for the Game Boy. This time the game takes place on Mario's own private island, known simply as Mario Land, complete with his own castle and a massive mechanical version of himself. I guess saving the Mushroom Kingdom a couple of times made Mario a very rich man, and possibly a narcissist.
Please bring me pizza. And make sure that these boxes are not recycled.
The story begins shortly after the events of Super Mario Land, as Mario returns from saving Princess Daisy from the evil alien Tatanga in the Empire of Sarasaland. You should go check that video out. But before Mario can head back to start sipping Mai Tais in his throne room, it looks like Wario has hypnotized all the inhabitants of the island and conquered Mario's castle while he was away. I also like that the story in the instructions booklet is told from Mario's perspective, who mentions that Wario has been jealous of his popularity ever since they were boys. We'll look more into that later. For now, Mario has to go track down the 6 golden coins that Wario spread around the island since they serve as the keys to his castle. And you'd think Mario would take these with him if Wario's tried this multiple times already. Anyway, Mario sets off to the 6 major zones on his island to get back each of the 6 golden coins, each guarded by a different boss like Witch and Big Bird. I know I complained about the lack of localization for the boss names from the first Super Mario Land, but these are definitely a bit plain. So Mario Land is split up into the Tree Zone, Space Zone, Macro Zone, Pumpkin Zone,
this place sure feels haunted,
Turtle Zone, and Mario Zone, which gives this game a really diverse set of levels, each with much more elaborate backgrounds and level design than the first game.
Topanga!
Yes, they even featured Tatenga as a boss in the Space Zone, returning as Wario's minion to get revenge against Mario. So while Mario here is collecting the golden coins, let's see how this game and Wario came to be. Super Mario Land 2's development was once again handed back to Nintendo R&D 1, the team responsible for the first Super Mario Land title, and Gunpei Yokoi would return as the producer. This would be yet another title without the involvement of Shigeru Miyamoto, who worked with another department, Nintendo Entertainment Analysis and Development. And if you're curious, they're probably working on Super Mario Kart around this time. The developers of Super Mario Land 2 wanted to take another departure from what was already established in Mario titles. One of these major changes was removing a princess from the equation and instead having to have Mario strive to get something back that once belonged to him. But who would he be fighting against? Well, the team made several attempts to determine this and rejected many designs for the game's antagonist in the process. Hiroji Kiyotake was a young developer on the team at the time and served as one of the directors for the game. He'd be the one to introduce the idea of Wario, with his name being one of the very first things they all agreed upon. The name itself is a combination of Warui, the Japanese word for bad, and Mario, and it just so happens if you flip the M on Mario's cap, you get a W. I guess we can thank the alphabet for that one.
You're welcome!
So Kiyotake would work with the assistant character designer Takehiko Hosokawa to flesh out the details, wanting to give a Bluto to Mario's Popeye. And seeing they did the same thing to come up with Donkey Kong, Popeye really deserves our thanks for all the inspiration he's brought into the Mario universe. The design would be finalized by none other than Yoichi Kotabe, the lead artist for the Mario series at that time, with him drawing inspiration from both Bluto and Stromboli, one of the antagonists from Disney's Pinocchio. Oh, and if you guys were wondering, Wario weighs 308 pounds and this is what he looks like on the inside.
I never asked for this.
So this detail isn't crazy important, but I found it funny that Kiyotake's favorite enemy in the game was the bee fly in the tree and macro zones. The way they're programmed, you can take them out by just jumping on them since they fly away too fast. And apparently this amused Kiyotake to the point where he was laughing out loud when he first interacted with them, and mentioned how excited he was to see players get frustrated while struggling to take them out. So if you all ever wondered if game developers laugh themselves to sleep at your misfortune in a video game, the answer is yes. This game is a classic gem, and even though it obviously serves as a sequel to Super Mario Land, it's an improvement in every possible way. It's lengthier, more challenging, has interesting level themes, and a banging soundtrack by Nintendo's sound veteran and Yoshi's voice actor, Kazumi Totaka. I definitely recommend checking this out if you haven't. It still holds up pretty well and even has a ROM hack called Super Mario Land 2 DX that gives the entire game a splash of color, which honestly breathes new life into it. Anyway, let's see how Mario's doing. Oh nice, you have the last golden coin. Well, it's off to Mario's castle to finally take down Wario, and we've come full circle with Wario grinding his feet on Mario's couch. This is an interesting boss battle in itself, as Wario goes through 3 phases using different power-ups that Mario has been utilizing within the course of the game. Despite Wario's best efforts, Mario wins the day, and Wario is reduced to a crying mess on the floor. This was a nice touch. Well, with Mario's castle reclaimed and peace restored to his lands, what happens to Wario? Well, before we get into that, I wanted to take a look at the earliest point chronologically in Wario's timeline. Seeing as Mario mentions him in the manual for Super Mario Land, it's safe to say that they've met before, but where exactly did they meet? Well, we'd see their very first meeting in a game known as Yoshi's Island DS. I spoke about this game in more detail in Mario's origin video, but I think we need to talk about it for Wario's sake here. So in Yoshi's Island DS, Bowser goes back in time to kidnap a bunch of babies from the Mushroom Kingdom in hopes to find the 7 Star Children, a set of kids that have magical stars within them that, when collected, can make someone the ruler of the universe. I don't know how that works, but that's what the story says. Baby Mario, Luigi, and Peach are kidnapped by Kamek and the Toadies, but this kidnapping is cut short by the Stork, who's finally had it with these guys coming to kidnap babies. This scuffle causes Kamek and the Toadies to drop Mario and Peach, and they fall into the care of the Yoshis, who go on an adventure to stop Bowser and save all the children. We see baby Wario as one of these babies who was also kidnapped, but the Toadies couldn't take his crying anymore, so they abandoned him in a cave. I gotta say, that's pretty funny. Yoshi, along with the other babies, find Wario and take him along for the adventure. Chronologically, this serves as Mario and Wario's very first meeting. There's not much to baby Wario here, as they based a lot of his personality on his future greedy persona, with him even leaving the group for a bit to join bandits. And later on, he would even feud with baby Bowser for a bit over treasure. Yoshi's Island DS is one of those Mario plots that you don't think too hard about, especially with this baby DK being the source of a lot of debate. but I'll save that rabbit hole for another video. We get a little more context to Mario and Wario's earlier encounters in 1993 from a short comic series called Mario vs. Wario, published within the pages of Nintendo Power issue number 44. The comic was intended to give a little bit more background on why Wario is so adversarial to Mario. And it opens with Mario getting a letter from Wario inviting him to a party at his house so they can catch up after 20 years. So after getting the letter, Mario's actually pretty excited to go visit Wario and takes a moment to reminisce the good times that they had as children on his way there. Meanwhile, we see that Wario never enjoyed their time together, accusing Mario of bullying him the whole time, especially when they played cowboys as children. Out of the 1,255 times they played cowboys, Wario only got to be the sheriff once. You find out most of the misfortune here that Wario is describing isn't exactly Mario's fault, but the grudge has already been born, as Wario intends to get his revenge upon Mario's arrival. Most of the events in this comic has Mario being ambushed by the bosses from Super Mario Land 2, but he just kinda naively stumbles his way through each of these encounters. Like in his fight with Witch, she throws pot lids at him and he ends up latching it onto his shoes. He ends up just thanking her and uses them to walk across water on his way to Wario's. I don't sense any snark here from Mario, I just think he legitimately thinks these bosses are playing around with him. Anyway, Mario finally arrives at Wario's castle and immediately Wario attacks, but just by pulling his air plug on his clothes, Wario deflates down to a much smaller size and once again accuses Mario of always being a bully. This seems to be complete news to Mario and he tells Wario to let bygones be bygones and to stop being a wimp. Maybe Mario actually is a bully. To add insult to injury, the comic ends with Mario whipping out the old sheriff outfit to traumatize Wario once again. So this comic was re-released a couple of times with a reprint in the Super Mario Adventures comic, and later as a downloadable file on the Wario Land 4 website. Speaking of which, this website was called Welcome to Greedville, which apparently is called the hometown of Wario. You had the opportunity to play games at Wario's arcade and earn Wario bucks, and then spend those bucks at the Wario Mart so you can get like wallpapers and screensavers and all that cool stuff. Yo, leave me a comment if you still use a screensaver, bro. I had to take a second to cover Welcome to Greedville because I miss when web pages used to do things like that. I don't think it's clear whether this was supposed to be a simple retelling of Super Mario Land 2 or if it serves as events that happened before that game. I'll let you all be the judge. Either way, it gives us a rare look at some early interactions between Mario and Wario, and this also paints Wario here as a more misunderstood character if anything else. So with Wario being ousted from Mario's castle, Nintendo wasn't finished with him yet, with the team at Nintendo R&D 1 coming together again to make his very own title. There was one game in between that wasn't made by them though. A Japanese exclusive puzzle platform title called Mario and Wario was released for the Super Famicom in 1993, but this time it was developed by a tiny indie company at the time called Game Freak.
Oh shit!
Yeah, so not only was this exclusive in Japan, but you needed a Super Famicom mouse to play. Essentially, Mario, Peach, Luigi, and Yoshi are looking for some forest fairy to find happiness. I guess they were all going through something at that time. Anyway, they lose Luigi, and while heading off to find him in the forest, Wario just throws a bucket from the sky onto Mario's head. Mario. I don't know, I think Mario deserves this. Anyway, instead of pulling it off his head, you control the forest fairy Wanda with the mouse, helping to guide him to Luigi at the end of each level. It's a pretty simple concept, and this game doesn't really give any extra details on Wario himself, but I thought it would be interesting to bring up, seeing as this is one of the smaller titles Game Freak put out at the time to bring in some cash to work on the first Pokemon title. They did also work on a Yoshi game before this, simply called Yoshi for the Game Boy and NES, which would serve as their first contract with Nintendo, so to an extent, Mario, Yoshi, and Wario all played a part in getting Pokemon off the ground. How about that? Okay, now let's talk about Wario Land. Wario's first title of his own would serve as a sequel to Super Mario Land 2. They even used the subtitle Super Mario Land 3, so I guess they really wanted people to know that this was technically a Mario game. Released in early 1994, you play as Wario on a quest to get his own castle after getting kicked out of Mario's. He sets out to steal a golden statue of Princess Peach to sell for enough money to buy his castle. I love the manual's version of this, by the way. One day, Wario was practicing being mean. There you go, that's an actual pastime for Wario. The manual goes on to say that Wario heard a rumor that the statue of Peach was already stolen by the pirates of Kitchen Island, known as the Brown Sugar Pirates, with their infamous leader, Captain Syrup, being known worldwide for being a rotten, ruthless man. So Wario sets out to go steal it from them, and from the jump this game takes the basics from Mario, but adds a nice twist by putting more emphasis on branching paths, exploration, and coin collecting. The amount of coins you have will slightly change the ending of the game, so definitely a nice touch. Wario has his indestructible charge attack and power-ups of his very own, which definitely is a welcome change to the Mario formula. I remember the appeal of playing as the villain for once and feeling so powerful as Wario and just growing to love how goofy he was. So when he reaches the final showdown at Syrup Castle with the brown sugar pirates, you find out that Captain Syrup is a woman.
What?
Yeah, this was supposed to be a big twist. They even hid that from the player in the manual. But before Wario can claim the statue from her, she summons a genie to kill him. But Wario defeats it and grabs the lamp as treasure as well. With Captain Syrup defeated and the Peach statue found, it's time for Wario to claim his prize. Oh wow, maybe Mario is actually a bully. I'm just kidding. I know he's just reclaiming the statue, but this is a pretty funny cameo nonetheless. It's okay though. Wario has a whole genie to grant him wishes now, so in the end, he still gets his castle, but he has to pay the genie with all the money and treasures he's gathered on his adventure.
Yo, killing me with this!
So depending on how well the player does, the ending changes here, with the best options being a whole planet or a castle. And if you really sucked at the game, the genie will give Wario his very own birdhouse. For some reason, this seems like the more fitting ending. And so that ends Wario Land, solidifying him as a permanent character in the Mario universe. The success of this game opened the door for a whole Wario Land series, with the follow-up game Virtual Boy Wario Land being released for the Virtual Boy in 1995. Now I won't go down the whole Virtual Boy rabbit hole in this video, but just know this system was Nintendo's attempt at a virtual reality console, but everything about it was rather lackluster. Gunpei Yokoi, creator of the Game Boy, was the head of this project and by extension got some of the Wario Land team to develop Virtual Boy Wario Land, bringing Wario back for another treasure hunting adventure. Ultimately, the Virtual Boy was dubbed a failure and discontinued within a year, only selling 770,000 units within its lifetime. This was unfortunately when Gunpei Yokoi would step down and leave Nintendo, but not before he helped complete the creation of the Game Boy Pocket. Tragically, he'd pass away a year later after being struck by two automobiles while checking the damage on his car after a minor fender bender. Say what you will about this man and the Virtual Boy, but he was one hell of an inventor. Rest in peace, Yokoi-san. Despite the failure of the Virtual Boy, the Wario Land series would go on, spawning several other titles that now place the focus on Wario's treasure hunting adventures. And these games introduce totally different enemies and characters from what we've already seen in Mario's games, giving Wario Land titles their own charm and identity. And I gotta say, Wario World for the GameCube has probably one of the best pause screens of all time because of this song right here. Wario was also heavily featured in the Super Mario manga that ran from 1988 to 1998, published by Kodansha. I discussed this a little more in the Daisy video, but this manga also has adaptations of Super Mario Land 6 Golden Coins and Wario Land Super Mario Land 3. We see Wario introduce pretty much how he debuted in the games, with him taking over Mario's castle while Mario is busy smooching with Daisy. There's a lot of hilarious gags within this manga, and it even involves Luigi, Peach, and Daisy within the events of Super Mario Land 2. We get to see all the zones and bosses from the game as well, and the manga puts its own creative and hilarious spin on these encounters. This was the same volume where Wario transforms Daisy into Waluigi, and she starts transforming Luigi and Peach into Waluigi and Walu Peach. There are definitely some spicy interactions here. In the end, Mario and the others collect all the golden coins, and he has this epic showdown with Wario at the top of the castle. And honestly, I'm surprised at how many pages this fight takes. Kazuki Motoyama went all out on this fight, but in the end, Mario is once again victorious. But shout out to the chef over at the Fungi forums for archiving this manga. This hero put everything he had in one place, and this seems to be one of the few places to find scans of this series on the internet. I'll link this in the description below so you all can check it out. Wario would also go on to be featured in almost every Mario spin-off and sports title, and has been a part of the Smash roster since Super Smash Bros. Brawl. But before I go on to his famous WarioWare series, I have to take a second to talk about his voice. We first hear his voice in Mario Kart 64, but there are two different voice actors at play here. The international version of Mario Kart 64 featured Charles Martinet as the voice actor for Wario. I didn't mention him in Mario or Luigi's video, but this man breathed so much life and personality into the Mario cast. He's the voice of Mario, Luigi, Wario, and Waluigi, and truly manages to capture the essence of their characters with the limited speech that they're given within these games. So even though Nintendo clearly portrays Wario as a greedy, bratty, and somewhat goofy character, I'd say that Martinet's portrayal of him is the icing on the cake. There was one other voice actor Wario had for the Japanese version of Mario Kart 64, and all versions of Mario Party 1 and 2. He was voiced by German translator Thomas Spindler. In 2015, Spindler left a comment on a YouTube video called Wario Speaks German, which has a voice line from Mario Party with Wario saying, "So ein Mist."
So ein Mist.
Which translates to "aw darn" in English. Spindler's comment mentions that the Nintendo staff envisioned Wario to be German, and directed Spindler to voice him with that in mind. But with Charles Martinet fully taking on the role at some point, that German background is more or less gone, with Martinet giving him a more Italian portrayal. Just a little side note, I swore that Wario was saying, "Oh, I missed" this whole time. So this little fact here has closed a chapter for me, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. Wario has one other popular series that gained some traction over the years, and it is known as WarioWare. The first game in the series, WarioWare Inc. Mega Micro Games, was released for the Game Boy Advance in 2003. This was a rather big departure from Wario's previous adventures, with him deciding to settle down and start up a video game studio called WarioWare Inc. to legitimately bring in some cash. It's still crazy to me that after all we've discussed today, Wario just said screw it and decided to open up a small business. This series was made by, you guessed it, Nintendo R&D 1, who were inspired by a game they created called Mario Artist Polygon Studio for the Nintendo 64 Dynamic Drive. If you're not familiar with the 64DD, it was a disc attachment for the N64 that was only released in Japan in 1999. It was ultimately cancelled in the United States since it performed so poorly. Regardless, Mario Artist Polygon Studio gave players the ability to create 3D objects, add textures to them, and paint them within a sandbox environment. So essentially taking Mario Paint to the next level. I bring up this game because there's a minigame feature called Sound Bomber, which had the player attempt to get through several mini-games in quick succession. Sound familiar?
No.
Yes, Nintendo R&D 1 wanted to take this formula and build an entire game from it. But why Wario as the star? Well, developer Yoshio Sakamoto mentions, quote, "We got the idea of using Wario and the other characters because we couldn't think of anyone else who would be best for the role. Wario is always doing stupid things and is really idiotic, so we thought him and the rest of the characters would be best for the game." I feel like Sakamoto here used this interview as an excuse to roast Wario. So to keep the ideas flowing, each person on the team came up with their own mini-games, and the programmers created their own graphics for each mini-game, which is why the art styles are so wildly different between rounds. Miyamoto was also excited about the game, giving it the slogan Saita Saitan Saisoku, meaning more, shorter, faster, which definitely rolls off the tongue better in Japanese. And with that, the WarioWare series was born, featuring the gameplay of mindless, intuitive microgames back-to-back in rapid succession as the game increases in speed and difficulty for the player. The game features a whole new set of characters from a town called Diamond City, and are introduced as Wario's friends, helping him to make microgames for WarioWare Inc. Their ventures are actually successful, but in classic Wario fashion, he tries to swindle his employees and makes a break for his escape rocket with all the money that they earned. But Dr. Krygor here accidentally hits the rocket.
Oh my god!
Which causes Wario and his money to fall into the sea, and he dies forever. Just kidding. There were 8 more WarioWare titles after this. Now, I know I didn't cover everything there is to know about Wario, like the fact that he had a spin-off called Wario's Woods, or the fact that he liked strawberry crepes as his favorite food until it was changed to garlic. I didn't cover everything, but I damn near tried. I'm sorry to tell you guys, but this image is 100% real. This was at some point on the Mario Tennis website way back in the day when Waluigi first graced us with his appearance. So now that I got the bad news out of the way, let's talk a little bit about Waluigi and how a whole toenail clipping game came to be. But I need to talk about Mario Tennis first, so bear with me for a moment. This guy is a sinister associate of Wario that likes to play games with the rest of the Mario cast. He has a bone to pick with Luigi because of his popularity, and might just have a crush on Princess Daisy. I guess you can call him an athlete at best. But I guess posting this video will help me find out who has a stronger cult following, Waluigi here or Princess Daisy. But in my opinion, Waluigi has a lot of untapped potential within the Mario franchise, and is even more so grossly underutilized than Daisy. But let's take a look at his origins. So Waluigi's first appearance was in the Mario Sports title Mario Tennis for the Nintendo 64, developed by Camelot Software Planning. And if you're not familiar with Camelot, they're the makers of all Mario Tennis and Mario Golf titles and would go on to make the Golden Sun series, which personally I'd love to do a retrospective of someday. And if you truly go back in time with Camelot, you know that they once worked for Sega and were in charge of the Shining series for a little while before moving on to do contracts for Nintendo. So Mario Tennis was released in the summer of 2000 for the Nintendo 64, but it would also have a Game Boy Color counterpart released shortly after. Waluigi is introduced in the opening cutscene with him and Wario on the sidelines drinking Haterade while Mario and his friends hold a tennis tournament known as the Mario Star Tournament. The finals come down to Mario and Luigi prepare to battle it out in an epic singles match before Wario and Waluigi rush in to trash talk and challenge them. Instead of just entering the tournament, I guess they want to skip everything and take Mario and Luigi on here. By the way, I love how Luigi is ready to square up here. When it comes to sports, Luigi does not mess around. So while Mario tries to stop Waluigi and Luigi from throwing hands, Wario steps in to scrap too. But our favorite Koopa King descends from the heavens to challenge them to a friendly game alongside his boy, Boo. This is actually kind of a cute moment, I'm not gonna lie. So apparently after playing their asses off in that first tournament, they decide to start over, this time with Wario, Waluigi, Bowser, and Boo. And then a Bob-omb walks in and kills everybody.
Oh my god!
From there on, you get to select your characters and play either single matches or doubles, and if you manage to beat the game with Waluigi, you see him break out into a celebration dance only to be disregarded by Luigi, which upsets him greatly. Funny enough, the Mario Tennis Japanese website mentioned that Waluigi hates that Luigi is more liked than he is and strives to win in the tournament to gain similar respect. This is unrelated, but when Mario wins, I love how Wario manages to steal his trophy here before sliding down a pipe while Mario dives in after him with killing intent. Okay, so by the way, I know I did a poll that said Yoshi or Waluigi and I was gonna pick the winner for the next video, but I had Waluigi's script half written already and I have some things going on where I have time constraints on this week, so I'm gonna have to edit Waluigi first. I will get to Yoshi, and for the next poll, I promise I'll go with the results instead. So, alright, back to the video. Camelot was contracted to make this game shortly after Mario Golf, which also released on the Nintendo 64 just a year before. And while they had quite a few Mario characters to work with, they wanted a doubles partner for Wario. The idea for Waluigi came up from the designer of the project, Fumihide Aoki, who wanted to go with a character that would fill that role and also become the rival to Luigi. So they had pitched the idea of the character to Miyamoto, who actually liked it very much, and would go on to help flesh out the concept. And later on, Yoichi Kotabe would help with the final design. Of course, they would use Luigi and Wario as the rubric, exaggerating his features to create this lanky, angular body and chiseled, pointy chin. And just like Wario, they would flip the L on Luigi's cap to give Waluigi an upside down L on his hat. I mean, this could be a gamma sign as well, but it still doesn't make much sense. I guess this didn't work out as well for him as it did for Wario. The name Waluigi was derived from warui, the Japanese word for bad, and Luigi, which is very similar to how Wario's name was created from Mario's. It wouldn't be the first time this name was used, since we see it in the KC Mario manga by Kodansha that I spoke about in both Daisy and Luigi's video. But this version is just a hypnotized, evil version of Luigi himself and not a separate character. Even still, this was published back in 1992, so it's interesting nonetheless. In issue 135 of Nintendo Power introducing Mario Tennis, Waluigi's profile also mentions that his name comes from a rearrangement of the word Igi Walui, and they completely made up this word to make it make sense in English.
Oh, the deception!
The actual word they're referring to is Igi Warui, which can be used to describe an ill-natured person. And this is also unrelated, but it's cool to see Camelot discussing wanting to work on an RPG at some point, which I can only assume would become Golden Sun. And thus, Nintendo had a proper rival for Luigi, for the sports games at least. There was a few websites at the time that referred to Waluigi as Wario's younger brother, like the official Nintendo website around the time Mario Tennis was released. I don't know who wrote that because they've walked this back quite a few times already. So I think Nintendo got tired of people mistaking the two as brothers because it looks like they made sure Sega addressed this in several of the Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games titles. The most recent being Tokyo 2020, where the trivia explicitly states that Waluigi is not Wario's brother. At this point, just assume the only family in this series is Mario and Luigi and Bowser and Bowser Jr. Everybody else is keeping secrets. But I think Charles Martinet said it best. Wario and Waluigi are just two nice evil guys who found each other. Before I talk about some of his other appearances after Mario Tennis, I ran into something very interesting while researching this video. Around the release time for Mario Tennis, Waluigi had his own promotional website with the URL waluigi.com. They introduced this website in Nintendo Power issue 136 with the following passage. He's lean, he's mean, and he hates the color green. You can check out www.waluigi.com for all your evil psychic needs, photos, secret information, and all the wacky hijinks you could ever desire. We're looking to have online games too, including the Waluigi's Toenail Clipping Party. Now, I immediately thought this writer was just making a joke, but many fans online have been attempting to scrub the internet to track down a possible lost Flash game known as Waluigi's Toenail Clipping Party. And as of the release of this video, it hasn't been found yet. Oh, and hang on, there's one more thing in this Nintendo Power passage I wanted to point out. He's so bad, he sold Luigi's underwear on eBay, which raises an interesting question. Who bought this stuff?
What?
I'm more curious as to how and why Waluigi has Luigi's underwear in his possession, but let's not think too hard about that one and move on. So the Waluigi's Toenail Clipping Flash game search is still being discussed online, since I found some Lost Media detectives in the Lost Media wiki forums combing through the Wayback Machine for clues. One user, Media Monster, had this to say. Hello, I regret to inform everyone today that the Waluigi Toenail Flash game is in fact not a hoax. I remember seeing some debate a while ago whether or not Nintendo Power made this up just for the kick of it. They did not. If you put this link into the Wayback Machine, a Flash file will begin downloading on your computer. It definitely took me a minute to get my bearings here. Toenailscomin.swf. Yes, this is real. So according to Media Monster, this was the image that popped up, and I swore I was being trolled. This couldn't really be real, right? So you mean to tell me that the name of this toenail game was gonna be Waluigi's Foot Fault? Some poor web designers had to put this together and potentially work on a Flash game revolving around Waluigi's feet. Amazing. But not only did Media Monster post the image, they gave instructions on how to pull this image from existing Mario Tennis URLs on the Wayback Machine, so I did. I went to the Wayback Machine and did a CDX search to pull every associated URL in relation to MarioTennis.com. A CDX file is essentially a list of metadata with objects that are associated with a web archive file. So if you do this properly on the Wayback Machine, you get a list like this: embedded videos, images, style sheets, all that good stuff that's been used for the Mario Tennis site over the years. Now, all I had to do from here was search for toenails, and if you told my 16-year-old self that I'd be doing this for YouTube how many years later, he'd probably be hitting the delete button on that Sonic Gangster's Paradise video. So, lo and behold, there it is, mariotennis.com/toenailscoming.swf. So I didn't stop there, I actually downloaded a program that could run Flash files, and then I downloaded the Flash file, and when you run it, yes, Media Monster is legit. Waluigi's Foot Fault. Grab your shears and collect a jar full of smelly toenails clipped off Luigi's monstrous feet. The fungus is about to begin. And if you're wondering why this is a Flash file if it's just an image, he actually blinks. This was insane to me, but I need to move on. It's safe to say that either the full game existed at some point, or was just never fully released on that page because it wasn't worth the effort. Another asset that could be found is most likely the page for Waluigi's bio, though the bio itself has probably been lost to time. You can see traces of it in that original Nintendo Power issue.
And as for the toenail clipping Flash game, there has to be a web designer or some type of developer out there. It could have been just one person who worked on this, and they exist somewhere. If you are watching this video, come forward. Leave a comment to let me know. This mystery is so close to being solved, and you are the missing puzzle piece we all need.
And if anyone wants to dig deeper on this, by all means knock yourself out. If you actually manage to find the actual Flash game, let your boy know and I'll do an update on this video. So from here on, Waluigi would be featured in a majority of the Mario Sports titles and the Mario Party series, being added to the roster for Mario Party 3. In the story mode of Mario Party 3, the player has to take on the challenge of filling their stamp card with the 7 star stamps, with Bowser appearing throughout this mode to get in the player's way. The final stamp is known as the Mischief Star stamp, which Bowser wagers in a challenge against the player, but look at that, Waluigi swipes it from right underneath his nose, and he actually defeats Bowser in a fight. How about that? We've been underestimating him this whole time. He'll then invite the player to the final board in the game, Waluigi's Island, where they'll compete for the final star stamp. In Mario Sports titles from that point on, Waluigi's often paired up with Wario in their latest scheme to embarrass the Mario Brothers in some other sports tournament. And while none of these games really give much background on Waluigi as a character, he is involved in some interesting scenarios like in Mario Power Tennis, where he and Wario are destroyed in the first round of the tournament by the Mario Brothers. So they decide to draw all over Mario and Luigi's image on the tournament board, which leads to them getting chased by the police. And it's really weird to think about the police in the Mario world, but they're here in this game. They then get recruited by Bowser, who trains them to get back out there, which ends up with them just using a machine to launch a ton of bombs at Mario and Luigi. Anyway, that plan blows up in their face. Then there's Mario Golf Toadstool Tour, where Wario and Waluigi try to finesse their way through a golf tournament to face Mario and Luigi. In one of their matches, they end up hitting Bowser in the face with a golf ball, so he attempts to hunt them down and kill them with a bomb. One of Mario's shots ends up hitting Bowser's hand at a critical moment, and all three of them die in this explosion. Are you seeing a pattern here? But there's one game I haven't talked about yet in these videos that we need to address for Waluigi. Dance Dance Revolution Mario Mix. Yes, this game was given a story mode, believe it or not, with Mario and Luigi having to beat enemies and dance-offs to stop them from possessing the music keys, which have the ability to grant any wish. Waluigi is the antagonist that kicks this game off, attempting to steal the music keys from the Truffle Towers, causing them to scatter around the Mushroom Kingdom in the process. So of course he gains possession of one, and Mario has to show off his superior dance moves to get it back. Sometimes I'm still amazed that this game exists, but this was around the time where DDR peaked, so I'm not completely surprised. And it's still not the weirdest crossover I've seen. I'll give that award to Ape Escape and Metal Gear Solid.
This is Snake. Anyone on this codec frequency? Okay.
Why was this so good though? Waluigi would also help to kick off the story in Mario Tennis Aces for the Nintendo Switch. Adventure mode for this game opens with Wario and Waluigi attempting to steal a tennis racket with legendary power called Lucian, hidden within the Basque ruins. I found this kind of cool since it's a callback to Wario's treasure hunting days. But plot twist, the racket is an evil racket. Yeah, and then they pull up to the latest tennis tournament that the Mario brothers are playing in, covered in bandages, and want to give Lucian to Mario as a present for winning the championship against Bowser and Bowser Jr. Luigi in the end is the one that grabs it, which causes him, Wario, and Waluigi to get possessed, which kicks off an adventure to put down an evil tennis racket. I'm not bashing the game at all, it just sounds funny on paper. So outside of these sports and spin-off appearances, and the toenails, what else is there to really know about Waluigi? Well, not much, which is probably why he has such a cult following in the first place. Although this character wasn't exactly a banger at first, Waluigi has since been embraced by the internet, being the source of memes, awkward moments like this.
None of you guys are funny. If you want to prevent cancer, consider standing out in front of the shuttle that's running in front of the hotel.
And a huge push to get him onto the Smash Brothers roster.
Oh, now they gotta put in Waluigi. If Daisy's in it, they gotta put in Waluigi.
You can KO
Waluigi's in assist trophy. Oh no!
And now you
oh no! People are gonna be so mad that Daisy's in this, but Waluigi isn't.
And I think a lot of this stems from how much we don't know about this character. Case in point, even if Daisy is pretty absent in mainline Mario titles, I can tell you exactly who she is, where she's from, and even show off her moments in an old Super Mario manga. Wait, what? Waluigi was in a manga before his debut? Yeah, there was a small gag comic known as For Coma Land that covered the game Mario and Wario. I spoke about this game in my Wario video since it was created by a tiny developer called Game Freak. But this little comic has Wario visualizing what a Waluigi would look like, and there you go. This image was from 1994, and while it looks kind of nothing like the current Waluigi, it is interesting that we got a very basic design of him, though they just put a WL on his cap instead. He also makes a brief appearance in the other Super Mario manga, Super Mario Kun, showing up in the adaptations for both Mario Tennis and Mario Party 3. But outside what I've mentioned, Waluigi is still waiting for his turn, and if you look into some of the details written about him, it becomes a little sad. Super Smash Bros. Brawl. A twig-thin man who sees himself as Luigi's ultimate rival. He spent a long time working silently in the shadow of the Mario Bros. Before finally becoming strong enough to compete with them in tennis. Super Mario Odyssey. This outfit makes you want to lurk in the shadows, waiting for a turn in the spotlight. Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games. Wario's pal who thinks he's Luigi's rival. Super Mario Party. What? You think I'm not fine hanging out here alone? I think someone just needs to check in on Waluigi and see if he's okay. Despite not having much background to him, I think a little spot in either a Mario or Wario title in the future would be nice, and seeing there are rumors of another Mario baseball title in development, take that with a grain of salt. We'll be seeing Waluigi again pretty soon, and I hope we get more animations like this.
Waluigi!
The year is 1991, and you boot up your brand new Super Nintendo Entertainment System because Sega sucks, am I right?
Hell no, man. What the
You got Super Mario World bundled along with the console, and you jump right into these 16-bit levels with breathtaking new graphics. You hit this block on your path and
oh my god, what is that?
is that a dinosaur? You can ride the dinosaur? Oh wait, no, don't die. Yoshi pretty much turned the Super Mario gameplay on its head with his addition, but how did Nintendo come up with this idea? How did this spark a whole other successful franchise? And what the heck is a Yoshi anyway? Is it a dinosaur? Is it a turtle? Is it a dragon? I'm the Mentalk and welcome to the Origin Oracle series. Grab a snack, kick back, and let's head back in time. Yoshi made his debut in the goated Super Mario World, the best-selling Super Nintendo game of all time. Though a copy of this game was bundled with every Super Nintendo console, so Nintendo kinda cheated. But the story begins with Mario, Luigi, and the princess heading off to Dinosaur Land for a vacation. The instructions booklet mentions they needed to recuperate from their adventures. Funny enough, reading this takes me back to when Sonic tried to take a vacation too, only to have a mutated ancient being turned god lay waste to an entire city in front of his eyes. Sorry guys, there are no days off. So while Mario and Luigi are chilling at the beach, Bowser's minions scoop up the princess, and during their search for her, they come across an egg. The egg hatches to reveal a young dinosaur named Yoshi, who reveals that he and his brethren were all sealed in eggs by the Koopa tribe. And so begins their journey to save the Yoshis of Dinosaur Land and free the princess from the grasp of Bowser once again. All of these details were in the instructions booklet, even the moment where Mario gets his cape power up. It's actually a magical item given to him by Yoshi. So thanks Yoshi, you're the best. There's not much more to the story, but I find it interesting that what's written in the instructions booklet is slightly different in what we see in game. Unfortunately, there's no beach for Mario to relax on. The game opens with Mario setting off to rescue the princess, and your first stop on the world map is Yoshi's house. I totally thought this was Yoshi's alarm system when I was a kid, by the way. So Yoshi leaves a message behind to say that he went on a journey to save his friends. And so Mario sets off and then would release Yoshi from the egg Bowser trapped him in. All that aside, you now have one of the most versatile, should I say, power-ups in the game, giving you the ability to eat almost any enemy, spit up Koopa shells at obstacles and other enemies, sacrifice Yoshi for the greater good.
What was that last one?
Use Koopa shells to shoot fireballs, stomp, and fly. Oh yeah, and there's also the feature where you feed Yoshi enough fruits, he'll poop out an egg with a power-up inside. I always thought it was cool that as long as you have Yoshi at the end of the level, you can move on to the next one with him, no questions asked. Unless it's a castle or a ghost house, of course. And I gotta take a second to mention the bongos that come in anytime you're on Yoshi's back. This is such a nice detail, and they added it to every single level that you're capable of using Yoshi in. The bongos just add that razzle-dazzle, you know? So with all these creative gameplay enhancements surrounding Yoshi, how did Nintendo come up with him in the first place? Well, Yoshi is another idea from Shigeru Miyamoto, Super Mario World being one of the very first games designed for the Super Nintendo. 16 people made this game in 3 years, which goes to show how far games have come with the current size of development teams these days. Miyamoto always wanted Mario to ride a horse as far back as the release of the original Super Mario Bros. Though riding a horse would have been way too difficult with the technical limitations of the Nintendo Entertainment System, but the power of the Super Nintendo allowed them to do just that. And since the setting would be in Dinosaur Land, they decided to go with the dinosaur as Mario's trusted steed. The influence for Yoshi may even go back as far as 1984, from a character called Tamagon. This was a green dragon creature who starred in an arcade-like game called Devil World for the NES, the very first NES game created by Miyamoto and Tezuka. Tamagon also hatches from eggs and has the ability to eat enemies. Oh, and does this noise sound familiar? Cool. Yoshi was created by Shigefumi Hino, a graphics designer on the team, alongside Takashi Tezuka, longtime veteran director and game designer of the Super Mario series. I think Tezuka doesn't get as much credit he deserves for his contributions to many well-established Nintendo series like Super Mario and Zelda. This is a silly example, but boos were actually inspired by Tezuka's wife, who is a mostly shy person but got angry at him one time for spending too much time at work. And I have to wonder if she knows about this.
Get out!
Anyway, the name Yoshi is similar to the Japanese saying Yosh, meaning alright. Yoshi's name was also a combination of one of their staff members, Mie Yoshimura, and Nessie, the nickname for the Loch Ness Monster. These are some of the early sprites for Yoshi, and I'm actually very happy with what we got instead. Initially, the designs would be more reptilian in nature since Nintendo tried to zero in on the whole Dinosaur Land theme, but Tezuka and Hino felt it wouldn't fit the Mario universe and redesigned Yoshi. Yoichi Kotabe, the lead artist of the Mario series, would also contribute to the final design, and according to him, a chameleon he'd sketched earlier may have been the inspiration of Yoshi's long tongue. Tezuka and Hino also attempted to make Yoshi somewhat related to the Koopas, using a shell as his saddle. So you're probably wondering, what is Yoshi exactly then? Is he a dinosaur, a dragon, or some kind of Koopa? Okay, so this might be a little confusing, but here goes. In the manual of Super Mario World in the West, he's referred to as a dinosaur, and the fact that he's an inhabitant of Dinosaur Land, it would be correct to refer to him that way, initially. The Japanese manual, on the other hand, refers to Yoshi as a dragon. So to go along with this, the message Yoshi leaves behind at his house in the Japanese version of Super Mario World has his name assigned as Super Dragon Yoshi. So several Japanese guidebooks and manuals would continue to refer to Yoshi as a dragon, while Western guidebooks, and the movie, referred to him as a dinosaur. So where does the Koopa part come in? Takashi Tezuka has made some commentary multiple times that Yoshi was originally supposed to be a species of Koopa. Then in 2016, there was a bio posted on the Nintendo Japanese site saying, even though there's a shell on his back, we actually don't know whether Yoshi's a dinosaur or a turtle. Or you guys just can't make up your minds. Interestingly enough, they refer to him here as a dinosaur and not a dragon. To add to the confusion, Tezuka would also be asked a similar question in a 2019 interview around the release of Yoshi's Crafted World, stating, "Yes, I always had to insist he was a turtle. Because we wanted a character that wouldn't feel out of place in the Mario universe, we decided on a turtle. It might have been Miyamoto's idea, but I'm not entirely sure." The interviewer goes on to ask about the message in Super Mario World that was signed Super Dragon, to which Tezuka says, "I think we wrote that without really thinking about it too much." So let that be a lesson to all of us. I try to make sense of things within this franchise to the best of my ability, but at the end of the day, Nintendo isn't losing sleep over the finer details. But if you need me to take a stance on this, I'm going with the idea that Yoshis are a form of turtle that have dinosaur-like features. His appearance has shifted quite a bit over the years, so I wouldn't be surprised if some of these design changes were intentionally made to lean more into the turtle side. Even though Yoshi is proven to have the ability to lay eggs, most people often refer to him as male, myself included. But Miyamoto once said that he isn't sure if Yoshi is male or female. The Japanese text for Yoshi's trophy in Super Smash Bros. Melee states that Yoshis are neither male nor female. So to add to this, the chef minigame in Game & Watch Gallery 2 and 4 shows Yoshi giving birth to other Yoshis after he eats enough, so they don't even need a mate to reproduce. This even gets addressed by Snake and Otacon in Smash Bros. Brawl, and Palutena in Smash 4.
It lays eggs and throws them, right? Then it must be female.
Well, actually, it's a he. At least, that's what it says.
It talks.
Well, all living beings contain both female and male elements. It appears that Yoshi is no different.
So Nintendo, if they can reproduce all by themselves, what's the deal with Yoshi and Birdo over here? They've partnered up in multiple sports and spin-off games, and seeing we went down this road with Luigi and Daisy, I'm suspicious of their relationship. I wouldn't think too hard about this one, but in Mario Kart Double Dash, Birdo is Yoshi's partner, and the profile for Birdo on the Japanese website decided to have some fun with this. Appears to be Yoshi's girlfriend. Or is that boyfriend? By the way, I had no idea Birdo was simply named Catherine in Japan. Shout out to all the Catherines watching right now. Okay, so while we were talking about all of that, Mario defeated Bowser and saved the princess, rescuing all the Yoshi eggs in the process. With the day finally saved, they all head back to Yoshi's house and have an absolute rager.
Yo, this is Princess Daisy. You're listening.
Super Mario World also had the bonus stages in the Star World where you could feed different color baby Yoshis until they grew to full size. And once they do, these Yoshis can be found within levels from that point on. When they have shells in their mouth, they have different abilities depending on their color. I had to mention this because the flying blue one was my favorite. After the success of Super Mario World, Yoshi would get a few spin-offs made by different developers contracted by Nintendo. The first was released in late 1991, a puzzle game known simply as Yoshi.
Cause here comes Yoshi. And he's up against Goombas, Bloobers, Boo Buddies, and Piranha Plants in Nintendo's new stack and sandwich puzzle game called Yoshi.
It was also called Mario and Yoshi in other regions, and Yoshi's Egg in Japan. Yoshi is a simple falling block game that requires the player to match Yoshi eggshells as they drop into 4 different columns. Mario is here doing most of the work, of course, and while he's trying to get the eggshells together, you have to match enemies that are also falling to eliminate them from the columns before it stacks too high. This game, believe it or not, was crucial in the history of Nintendo, since it was the very first collaboration between them and Game Freak. Yes, the creators of Pokemon had their humble Nintendo beginnings on this very project, using it as a stepping stone to get the proper financial backing to work on a larger scale project that would eventually be the very first Pokemon game. Yoshi sold 500,000 copies in Japan on its first day of sale, and in the US topped the NES sales charts for 2 months, which for the early 90s is some pretty decent numbers. The second spin-off was Yoshi's Cookie, a Tetris-like puzzle game that was developed for the NES, Game Boy, and Super Nintendo. This game has the player matching sets of cookies until the board is fully clear. There's not much more to it, but I have to point out that Mario can literally do anything. Need cookies made from Yoshi's milk organized?
What?
Mario's got you. Need cakes packaged and sent for delivery? He's got you on that too. Need a building wrecked for your new condo?
Call or text Super Mario Bros. Plumbing today.
Now in 1993, there was also a first-person shooter called Yoshi's Safari for the Super Nintendo. Mario and Yoshi were finally tired of Bowser's shit, so you can join them on a quest with your Super Scope. Remember this thing? There's no getting around it. They really have Mario all strapped up in this first cutscene. Look at this. In all seriousness, Bowser kidnaps King Fret and Prince Pine from a nearby kingdom called Jewelry Land. So Princess Peach does wartime princess things and sends Mario and Yoshi to go aid their kingdom and save the king and prince. So you use the Super Scope to shoot at incoming enemies from the perspective of Mario, who is on Yoshi's back. Safari would not be my choice of words to describe what's happening here. It's called Yoshi's Road Hunting in Japan, by the way, which I guess could be a literal definition of the word safari. It's still a stretch to me. This game released around the time where Mortal Kombat was in the spotlight due to its violent nature. In fact, some articles credit the controversy surrounding the violence being watered down for the Super Nintendo version of Mortal Kombat being one of the reasons behind this game getting so little attention. I would also put this on the Super Scope for not reaching too many households at the time. So these 3 spin-offs were the beginning of the Yoshi franchise, in more ways than one. From the moment Super Mario World was being developed, Miyamoto thought of making a game starring Yoshi. He's outwardly said that he disliked the 3 Yoshi games that were developed and wanted to make one that fit the Yoshi character instead. So he would once again join Takashi Tezuka and Shigefumi Hino on the next project. Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island, released for the Super Nintendo in the fall of 1995. Now, I've covered this game several times since it serves as an origin story for Mario, Luigi, and Bowser, but the focus here is definitely the Yoshi tribe. The game opens with Baby Mario and Baby Luigi on their way to their parents via the stork before Kamek swoops in attempting to kidnap the brothers before they become a problem for Bowser in the future. Baby Mario is dropped during the scuffle and falls down towards Yoshi's Island where he's picked up by Yoshi. So Yoshi and his team decide to use a relay system to get Mario back to his brother and save Luigi from the clutches of Bowser and Kamek. The gameplay definitely shares many elements from the 2D Mario formula at the time, but Miyamoto wanted to develop a game that was more accessible and relaxed. They removed time limits and came up with the ideas for Yoshi's prolonged flutter jump, which made platforming a much easier task in comparison to previous Mario games. The unique art style itself was a result of Nintendo wanting to incorporate a wildly different approach than previous titles, since Donkey Kong Country set the new standard with its computer-generated graphics. In an interview with Hisashi Nogami, who was a character designer on the project at the time, he states that the team had to hand draw the characters on paper, which would then be scanned and recreated pixel by pixel to create the sprites that we saw in the final product. Nogami, by the way, would go on to be one of the lead producers for the Splatoon series, by the way. Anyway, Yoshi's Island would become an instant Nintendo classic, standing on its own as the beginning of a new series. It proceeded to spawn several Yoshi games with similar mechanics like Yoshi's Story, Yoshi's Island DS, New Yoshi's Island, Yoshi's Woolly World, and Yoshi's Crafted World. I know that's not all of them, but these are probably the most important.
How come you don't want me, man?
Yoshi's Story was the Nintendo 64 follow-up to Yoshi's Island, with Miyamoto stepping away from the project and Takashi Tezuka returning as the producer for the title. This time, the Yoshis would stand on their own against Kamek and Baby Bowser, with the plot taking place within a pop-up book, once again going for a unique aesthetic that the first game was famous for. I bring this game up mainly because it's the first time we would hear Yoshi's current voice. The genius behind his voice is Kazumi Totaka, one of Nintendo's veteran composers responsible for titles like Super Mario Land 2, Luigi's Mansion, and the Animal Crossing series. I tried to see if I could find Totaka pulling off Yoshi sounds in the booth and came across this video, so I'll ruin Yoshi for all of you as well.
I never asked for this.
Before
before I move on, I wanted to address a commonly asked question. Is there one main Yoshi, or does Mario interact with different Yoshis each time? What about the green Yoshi from Yoshi's Island? Is this the same Yoshi that Mario would later save on Dinosaur Island in Super Mario World? Well, to explain this, I'm gonna have to say Yoshi a lot, so bear with me. So the answer to this question isn't written in stone, but the leading theory is that the original green Yoshi that saves Baby Mario in Yoshi's Island is not the same green Yoshi we see in Super Mario World. Mario meets this Yoshi for the very first time during the events of the game, but it's assumed that this would be the main Yoshi we'd see in the mainline titles from that point on. So this Yoshi from Yoshi's Island is presumed to be just another green one from the past. This is further supported in the follow-up game to Yoshi's Island DS for the Nintendo DS. Bowser goes back in time to track down the 7 star children in the past so he can use their collective powers to become the ruler of the world. So he starts kidnapping all the babies in the Mushroom Kingdom willy-nilly in hopes of finding the correct 7. This reunites Yoshi with Baby Mario, who along with Peach, DK, Wario, Luigi, and Baby Bowser make up 6 of the 7. Once they've stopped Bowser at the end of the game, a young baby green Yoshi is shown hatching from an egg, revealed to be the final star child. Many fans believe that this implied that this Yoshi would become the main Yoshi Mario encounters on his adventures later down the line. So I guess we could call this the origins of Yoshi? The main one? So this is the part of the script where I'm wondering if I confused everyone. So nothing fully confirms this, and I'm pretty sure this is another one of those details Nintendo isn't showing any concern over. It would be funny if every Yoshi we've ever encountered up to this point is just a random green one that happens to show up that day. But even if there are one or several green Yoshis, the popularity of the Yoshis as a whole can't be understated. In 2008, a popularity poll in Japan would have Yoshi ranked the 3rd most popular character behind Mario and Cloud Strife. As recent as 2021, another poll in Japan by Line ranking the most popular Mario characters would have Yoshi come out on top as number 1, above even Mario himself. So it's no wonder we'd also see Yoshi make appearances in a majority of Mario sports and spin-off titles. As for the mainline Yoshi series, Nintendo has been using it to go all out for different art styles. Yoshi's Woolly World for the Wii U and Yoshi's Crafted World for the Switch both take an innovative spin on Yoshi by featuring these gorgeous worlds in the style of yarn or something you'd see in an arts and crafts kindergarten class. These games keep the plot even simpler, but manage to integrate the art style into the gameplay of each game, making for a really feel-good co-op experience. As of December, Yoshi's Crafted World has sold around 3 million copies, making it a pretty successful game, so I have to wonder if we'll see Nintendo continue to use the Yoshi series as an art medium. But I wanted to take a look at Yoshi's origins in media outside of the games. An easy one to start with would be the Super Mario World animated series by DiC Entertainment that aired in the early 90s.
Don't go away! Captain N and Super Mario Brothers World back soon!
It was the follow-up to the Super Mario Super Show and Adventures of Super Mario Bros. 3.
This motherfucker don't miss.
Super Mario World only had 13 episodes, but it introduces Yoshi as one of the main characters of the show, joining the Mario Brothers and Princess Toadstool on their adventures in Dinosaur Land. The final episode of the series, Mama Luigi, covers the origins of Yoshi within this series, and I never thought the day would come where I had to pick apart this episode for a YouTube video. For those who don't know, this episode was a major source of memes and YouTube poops back on the early days of YouTube.
Because YouTube
it's where the poop is.
Anyway, the episode has Luigi telling Yoshi the story of how they met. The beginning of the tale is pretty close to the story of Super Mario World, with Mario, Luigi, and the princess taking a trip to Dinosaur Land, but King Koopa wasn't too far behind. His minions kidnap the princess, and during a fight with a fire sumo, Luigi falls deep into the caves of Dinosaur Land. It's here Luigi discovers Yoshi's egg within one of the blocks, but in this version of events, he hatches as a baby and mistakes Yoshi for his mother, hence
Mama Luigi?
Baby Yoshi here would then help the brothers save the princess by eating a shitload of King Koopa's men. But above all else, I'd say putting Luigi in the spotlight here as the one to discover Yoshi puts an interesting spin on the events of Super Mario World. Last but not least, we can't forget about the 1993 Super Mario Bros. Movie. Now, as I've mentioned before, this movie will be getting its own video at some point, but Yoshi does make an appearance in here as well. The movie introduces the Mario brothers as plumbers from New York who, in an attempt to save a kidnapped Princess Daisy, end up in an alternate dimension called Dino Hatton. Yoshi is a pet of the royal family, or more specifically, King Koopa.
Go ahead and say it. Dinosaur.
Me blood clot.
but he isn't treated so well by his master. We see Daisy grow compassion for the tiny dinosaur and they ultimately befriend each other. As unsettling as a realistic Yoshi may look, this was an animatronic designed by the team of Patrick Tatopoulos, who is a pretty renowned production designer that would go on to work on titles like Independence Day, Chronicles of Riddick, and the 300 films. Since Super Mario Bros. Was being created at the same time as Jurassic Park, Tatopoulos wanted to make a cuter and less menacing dinosaur in Yoshi. This puppet had 4 different versions, one being a fully functional model that required 70 cables and 9 operators. They spent $500,000 on this thing. Adjust for inflation and you're looking at a little over $1 million today. I mean, in all honesty, it looks pretty good, but the fact that it's Yoshi is the part that always weirds me out, even when I first watched this movie back in the day. Rosalina left quite an impact on Mario fans after her debut in Super Mario Galaxy. She's the keeper of the Comet Observatory that's been floating through the cosmos, visiting the Mushroom Kingdom every 100 years. And sometimes she'll pop in from time to time to play sports with the others. In this video, we take to the stars to explore the origins of the Mother of Lumas, Rosalina. I'm the Mentalk and welcome to Origin Oracle. So go ahead, grab a snack, kick back, and let's head back in time. Super Mario Galaxy for the Nintendo Wii would be the first time we'd see Rosalina, with Nintendo taking Mario's adventures into space. Even though we've seen Mario hopping around other celestial bodies before, the entire game was structured around the player exploring several different galaxies, hence the name. The story begins at the Centennial Star Festival that's popping off in the Mushroom Kingdom, as all the citizens gather together to witness a comet that passes by the planet every 100 years. Peach sends a letter to Mario inviting him to the castle on the night of the Star Festival, mentioning there's something she wants to give him, and you can tell by how Mario's running toward the castle that he misinterpreted what that something was. I forgot to mention that this game dropped in 2007, and as someone who picked this up on release day, I have to give quick props to this moment. This part where you control Mario passing through the Mushroom Kingdom while all the toads are hanging out in the festival was such a gorgeous opening. I was actually a little disappointed when the next cutscene started. What could go wrong? That cutscene features Bowser and his minions performing an all-out assault on the Mushroom Kingdom. They waste no time blowing things up here. He once again comes to kidnap Princess Peach and does this by just lifting her entire castle away from Earth. Can't say he hasn't tried this before though. Mario quickly attempts to pursue them, but gets blasted away by a Magic Koopa and is left to burn up in the Earth's atmosphere. Damn! But a mysterious star creature in Peach's possession races off to save him. This intro is a lot like Super Mario Odyssey's now that I'm looking at it again. Anyway, Mario awakens on a tiny planet and plays hide and seek with some bunnies before we meet the beautiful Rosalina for the first time. She tells Mario that she watches over and protects the cosmos and proceeds to help him on his quest to find his special one, aka Peach. The mysterious star creature, on the other hand, is called a Luma, who Rosalina asked to accompany Mario to give an in-game reason for his new spin ability. Mario is now on a mission to collect as many stars as he can so they can power up Rosalina's Comet Observatory to pursue Bowser and save Princess Peach. That's the gist of the story, and Rosalina mostly just hangs out at the observatory while Mario, Luigi, and the Toads are doing all the work. The observatory itself serves as the main hub and gateway to all the different galaxies Mario will explore, and it has various rooms built into it to show that it doubles as the home of Rosalina and the Lumas. Now, if we truly want to dive into the origins of Rosalina, Mario will have to head into the library periodically as he's collecting stars. Rosalina herself will read a story to Mario and the Lumas, which turns out to be the tale of how she ended up at the observatory and became the Mother of Lumas. But in this case, I'll be telling you the story today. So welcome everyone to Mentalk Storytime, name subject to change. The storybook opens with a young girl discovering an old spaceship with a distressed Luma inside of it. It's emphasized that this takes place a very, very long time ago, and while we're not certain how many years it's been since these events happened, it's safe to say Rosalina is a pretty old soul. Anyway, the girl in the story discovers that the Luma is waiting in the rusted spaceship for its mama, explaining that she's supposed to arrive on a comet. So the girl decides to wait alongside the Luma as they gaze into the stars for any sign of her. But this turns into years of waiting. The girl decides it would be a better idea to fix the spaceship and head into the cosmos to go find the Luma's mother instead. And so their adventure begins.
So one day they spot a comet in the middle of space and manage to chase it down in hopes that the Luma's mother is on it, but it just turns out to be an empty ball of ice. So the girl and the Luma decide to stay on the comet as it speeds through space to continue their search. During their journey, the girl expresses that she deeply misses her mother, crying to the Luma because she'll never see her mother again, which seems to trigger the Luma as well because it starts crying for its mama too.
Come on now, dawg.
But in that moment, the girl comforts the Luma and vows to take care of it, one of her first motherly gestures. So the two decide to make their comet a little bit homier by building a bunch of rooms on the surface. And if you're wondering how, apparently below the ice of the comet, there is like a convenient set of tools and furniture, which makes me more curious on how those got there than anything else in this story, but I digress. Despite the new home, the girl is still homesick and expresses how much she misses her father, brother, and mother. Sometime after this, a planet appears on the horizon, which delivers more Lumas to the girl's doorstep looking for their mama. This puts the girl in great spirits, and without hesitation, she takes them all in as her children, moving them into the house that her and the original Luma built. More time passes, and with her telescope, the girl gazes longingly at the blue dot that was her home, reminiscing on the different things she used to do with her family, and she breaks down. This is the part of the story where it's revealed that the girl's mother died a long time ago, and is buried under a tree on the hill close to her home. The Luma that's been with her this whole time steps up to console her, and tells the girl that it will transform into a comet that will help her soar through the cosmos. It plummets into the surface of the comet and is reborn as a brand new one, setting course for the girl's home. It's revealed to the girl that the destiny of Lumas are to transform into celestial objects like stars, planets, and comets once they mature. So she vows to serve as the mother of Lumas until it's their time to shine. And in turn, she finds a new family among the stars. She also decides to return home once every 100 years just to take a moment to visit her original planet and nap in her favorite sleeping nook. I hope you all enjoyed Storytime with Mentok. Name subject to change.
I like that.
So while this book doesn't explicitly say it's the story of Rosalina, this is definitely Rosalina. The story also doesn't directly mention that Rosalina is a princess, but you can see her castle in the distance that she calls home. Even though reading through this book was completely optional, a story like this wasn't exactly characteristic of mainline Mario titles up to this point. So was this story originally planned for Rosalina all along? The short answer is no, but I gotta talk about the development of Super Mario Galaxy for context first. The key individual behind Rosalina's creation and the inclusion of this story was Yoshiaki Koizumi, who was the director for Super Mario Galaxy. You may be familiar with him as one of the hosts for several Nintendo Directs, and he currently serves as a senior executive officer over at Nintendo. Yes, he's definitely climbed through the ranks since this game. Originally, he studied to become a film director, specializing at Osaka University of Arts in film, drama, animation, and storyboarding. Instead, he would end up at Nintendo in the early 90s and worked on the writing that you would find within instructions manuals, which at the time was where you would find most of the story for video games. Prior to Galaxy, he served alongside Miyamoto for several projects, with his first major role being an illustrator for The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past back in 1991. Eventually, Koizumi would become the director for Super Mario 128, a technical demo shown at the Space World event in August 2000 to demonstrate the processing power of the Nintendo GameCube. While this codename was originally used for a proposed Super Mario 64 sequel, the tech demo itself demonstrated up to 128 on-screen Marios walking on a circular board, which for the time was definitely a flex. Both Miyamoto and Koizumi were laser focused on the idea of implementing spherical worlds and rounded surfaces, since it had never been mastered in game development at the time. But Koizumi felt they needed more time to achieve this. Internally, the technology and expertise wasn't there yet. So Super Mario Sunshine was released instead for the GameCube in 2002, developed separately from the project that was Super Mario 128. Even after the release of Sunshine, Miyamoto and other Nintendo executives would be continuously questioned on the status of Super Mario 128. But even though there weren't Mario titles, 128's physics and other technical concepts were incorporated into other big titles like Metroid Prime, The Legend of Zelda: Twilight Princess, and Pikmin. It wouldn't be until 2005 when Miyamoto finally revealed that the project would blossom as a full Mario title for their newest console, the Nintendo Revolution, which was later officially named the Nintendo Wii. With the new technological capabilities of the Wii, Super Mario Galaxy was inspired by some of the concepts within Super Mario 128, and also managed to have the spherical surfaces they were pining for implemented within it. Miyamoto stated that he wanted to go with the usual Princess Peach kidnapping plotline,
But with Koizumi as the director, he wanted to include a little bit more. The game would end up having another set of characters, a princess from outer space, and her family of talking stars. This space princess would be called Rosetta in Japanese, which is named after a type of orbit in astronomy. But this name would be localized in most languages as Rosalina. I couldn't 100% track down why localization teams went with Rosalina as the name, but I can only surmise that they were trying to attribute it to a rose or maybe go with a similar plant theme as Princess Daisy and Peach. But you can also attribute a rose to beauty, and it sounds similar to Rosetta, so maybe they just went with that. If anyone has any information on that, let me know. Interestingly enough, in Italian, they went with the name Rosalinda, which can be associated with the Spanish phrase Rosa Linda, meaning beautiful rose. And speaking of Spanish, in that version they call her Estella, which is the Spanish word for the tail of a comet, which is also pretty close to the word estrella, which is the Spanish word for star.
Alright, I get it!
So this is one of the early design concepts for Rosalina, with a completely different hairstyle and a dress that looked more like what we'd see Peach or Daisy wear. At some point, the final design would change most of this, but some of the similarities to Princess Peach were entirely intentional. The development team contemplated having her character be related to Princess Peach, but eventually dropped this idea in the final story. There are a few fan theories surrounding this, but I'll get to that topic later on in the video. Rosalina is also shown to be pretty damn tall. This is her in comparison to Peach and Daisy. Now that I think on it, let's see if we can get a Rosalina Lady D mod in Resident Evil 8.
Wow. Well, Ethan Winters.
In a 2007 interview with Wired, Koizumi would mention that he wanted to go against the grain with Rosalina's story, stating, "For a very long time, it really felt like telling a story in a Mario game was something that wasn't allowed. But I felt in this case that Lumas and Rosalina really needed a story to explain what they were doing out there to give the players a deeper understanding of their presence. So telling her story as a fairy tale by reading the book to all the Lumas as if they were young children at story time just seemed like the mood-appropriate way to accomplish this." In another interview with Nintendo Power, Koizumi revealed that he worked on Rosalina's storybook all by himself in the middle of the night without anyone knowing. On top of that, story elements within games were something that Miyamoto wasn't usually too fond of. Despite all this, Koizumi would present the storybook to Miyamoto and express how important it was to him, and soon it would find its way into the game. I think this story of perseverance also ties well into Rosalina's character arc, and I'll round it off with one last quote from Koizumi. "In Mario games, there are constantly peaks and valleys of finding a challenge, not being able to get past it, and then getting better and eventually overcoming it." That was the cycle of events that happened in the storybook over and over again, as Rosalina had many disappointments that she eventually overcame with the help of the Lumas. Introducing a story like that, which sort of bolsters the player's feeling that there's hope, that it's possible to persevere, was a really good way to encapsulate all of this. I know at this point this sounds more like an origin video for Yoshiaki Koizumi than anything else, but his contributions to a lot of the games he worked on are absolutely incredible, even as far back as A Link to the Past. I'll include a link to the Wired article in the description if you want to learn more. Or maybe I'll cover it in a future Link video. Wink wink. Okay, that segment was so long that Mario already collected all the power stars and is about to defeat Bowser. Yes, at the end of the game, Mario and Bowser square off at the center of the universe, and as usual, Bowser is defeated. Though it looks like from the aftermath of their battle, a planet explodes and forms a massive black hole that begins to consume the entire universe. This ending gets pretty crazy. I remember my shock when it looked like they permanently killed off Bowser here. But in a moment of hope, all the Lumas at the observatory begin to sacrifice themselves into the black hole, including the Luma that traveled with Mario this whole time. This actually makes me sad. So their sacrifice reforms space and time, essentially resetting and recreating the universe. Rosalina has one last chat with Mario, while baby Lumas are wailing behind her, and simply tells him that life is a cycle. Baby Lumas eventually become stars, stars eventually die and become stardust, forming Lumas all over again to repeat the cycle. With the universe destroyed and recreated, everybody celebrates, and Bowser is brought back to life, And the game ends with Rosalina thanking Mario. Or maybe she's thanking the player because she's looking directly at the screen. And the game ends beautifully with her returning to the observatory to continue watching over us and the rest of the cosmos.
Super Luigi Galaxy!
Oh, hell yeah. So to date, Super Mario Galaxy remains as the game where Rosalina gets the most attention, but she's appeared in quite a few Mario titles since. But before I continue, I want to address some fan theories. As I've noticed with a lot of the comments I've been reading lately, there are a whole host of rumors and misinformation that has spawned from the Super Mario franchise. It's entertaining to read, to say the least, so I know that if I don't mention this fan theory, people are probably going to wonder why I didn't discuss it. So, there's a famous video from MatPat from the Game Theorist channel declaring that Rosalina is potentially somehow the daughter of Luigi and Peach. And while that video is well produced and does have some good points, there's nothing from Nintendo or the developers from Super Mario Galaxy themselves to support this. The devs did say they were thinking of making Rosalina a relative of Peach, and completely dropped the idea, and I think the connection kinda stops there. And a disclaimer so I don't have to address it in the comments, just because I don't agree with MatPat on this doesn't mean I'm saying that you watching this should disagree as well. Nintendo could come out tomorrow and say this was their original idea for all I know. I'm simply presenting the facts that are out there, but by no means does that mean you can't enjoy fan theories. But if we do want to play with the idea that Rosalina is still some kind of relative to Peach, I would assume she's more of an ancestor if anything. In her storybook, it's mentioned that she has a brother, and maybe this brother continued the lineage of the Mushroom Kingdom. Anyway, I bring all of this up to say that I don't mind dabbling in fan theories from time to time, especially if there are developer notes or in-game lore to support them, but I'll mostly mention them in passing rather than doing deep dives. Though I love reading about them in the comments, so feel free to leave any interesting theories you may have as you watch these videos. In the summer of 2010, Super Mario Galaxy was released for the Nintendo Wii, which seems to be more of a reimagining of the first game. Compared to the original, this one is even lighter on plot, but begins very similarly with Mario and Peach coming together to enjoy cake during the Star Festival, or that's what Peach is calling it. Mario finds the same baby Luma from the first game on his way to Peach's castle, so for those who thought you'd never see him again, here he is. Bowser attacks the castle again and kidnaps Princess Peach, taking her to the center of the universe. So the Lumas aid Mario in pursuing Bowser, which takes him back into space and onto a planet-like ship, captained by a big Luma named Lubba. They transform it into a planet-sized Mario head and start exploring the galaxies again with it to collect enough stars to get to the center of the universe. Let's address the elephant in the room then. Why is Lubba here facilitating everything? Where's our hot elderly space princess?
You good, bro?
Rosalina is more or less absent throughout the entire game except the ending. Yeah, Mario collects enough stars to fight Bowser in the center of the universe and save Peach, and as Bowser's plans unravel, we see the Comet Observatory come into view. It looks like Bowser stole their stars again to set his plans in motion, but with him defeated, the family on the observatory is free once more. Rosalina tells the others that a pole that defies time and space would bring them all together again, which hints that the events of the game take place differently in a rewritten universe after the calamity at the end of the first game. Potentially. Some people debate whether this is a sequel, retelling, or just another example of Nintendo not caring about plot and continuity. Either way, the baby Luma takes Mario's hat as a souvenir and everyone lives happily ever after. If you manage to collect 120 stars, we see Rosalina ending story time with the Lumas, implying that the events of the game are a story being retold by Rosalina. Honestly, I always just looked at Galaxy 2 as more levels, and considering how polished this format was, I wasn't going to complain when this came out. I highly recommend these two games if you can get your hands on them. Still waiting for that Switch port for Galaxy 2, Nintendo. After this game, Rosalina does make more appearances, but not as substantial as the two Galaxy games. She's an unlockable player character in Super Mario 3D World, but you're going to have to put in some work before you start playing as her. She can do the spin that Mario does in the Galaxy games, so that's a nice reference, but she isn't available to the player until after you defeat Bowser. Don't sleep on this title though, it definitely holds up. And I want to take a brief second to show off this concept art from Super Mario Odyssey here. I can only guess that they were planning on having Rosalina be some traveling guitarist at some point in that game, which I would have absolutely adored. Unfortunately, this is all that's left of that concept, her in a black t-shirt and some jeans, but I'm loving it anyway. Rosalina's latest appearance as of this video is in Mario & Rabbids Sparks of Hope, which is a great game, but I'm still wondering how this collaboration happened in the first place. This little series is kind of a beast of its own, containing its own world and lore that I'd say is mostly its own thing, with Mario elements and locations sprinkled throughout. Instead of playing as Rosalina in this game though, you play as a rabbit that idolizes her. Rosalina herself is kidnapped by the big baddie in this game. Disappointing, I know. But seeing as there's DLC on the way, maybe there's still hope that she too will be sniping enemies. Rosalina can also be found as a playable character in a bunch of Mario spin-offs and sports titles, the place where the other Mario characters go to die. I'm sorry guys. Mario Kart 8 and Dr. Mario World include playable baby versions of her though, so that's kinda interesting. But I'd argue her biggest appearance outside of the main Mario titles was Super Smash Bros. For the Wii U and 3DS. I can't say I ever expected this announcement, but her and the Lumas come to kick ass, and if you guys remember the competitive scene for Smash 4, she was the top of the ranks for a while.
Can I please recover?
You're definitely dead.
Their mechanics were similar to Ice Climbers in that you could control Rosalina and the Luma individually, and when set up right, the two could easily control the stage. You even get different color Lumas to control, including the black one.
What do you mean by that?
That serves as Mario's guide around the observatory in the very first Super Mario Galaxy game. I discovered his name was Polare, by the way. They never actually said his name in game, so it's one of those things you would have to read in the instructions manual. Rosalina and Luma returned for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate because everybody's here, am I right? Congratulations, you made it to the end of the video, and if you got this far, go ahead and leave "I attended Waluigi's toenail clipping party" in the comment section below. I appreciate you guys so much, thanks for watching everything, and as always, be safe. The Prophet has spoken.